Hi, my name is Todd Jacobs.
And I'm Peter Lynn. We're the authors of a brand new book about marriage called Not a Partnership. And we're here to talk to you about how to build a great marriage. The reality is the current state of marriages today is not so great. The basic statistic is that 50% of marriages don't make it. But beyond that, just because you stay married doesn't mean that that's called successful. We really feel that marriage can be the greatest place of your happiness and of your ability to flourish in life. There are a lot of techniques and books out there today that can be helpful in marriage, but what we have to offer is something totally different. What we're going to do is give you a totally new way of thinking and of acting, which can really impact your marriage. So it doesn't matter what stage of life you're up to as far as your relationship is concerned, whether you're thinking about marriage, whether you're about to begin one, whether you've been married for a long time, even if you're struggling in your marriage or you want to build a better one, the information that we have here is for you and you can begin to apply it now.
When it comes to our careers, we find that there are at least three things that are always true. Number one is you prepare for it. You take classes for it, you get a degree for it, you have all kinds of preparation materials at your disposal, and you never go into it not ready. Secondly, once you get into your career, once you're working in your job, we're constantly being reviewed. We're focused on our performance all the time. We're making sure that we are never not performing. The third thing that's true about a career is that we know exactly what a successful career looks like. I know if I'm doing well, if I'm not doing well, and I know what that picture of success is. It's very clear in my mind. Now, when it comes to our marriages, let's think about it. I go into my marriage, which is certainly as complex as any job is going to be, and somehow when it comes to marriage, I think, I don't need to prepare for that. I've seen movies, I've read books, let's just go for it. And I think I can sort of just wing it in my marriage. So that is kind of strange. And then secondly, once I'm in my marriage, am I really constantly looking at my performance? Am I being reviewed? Well, I guess if my spouse screams at me and tells me I'm a crummy husband, I suppose that's a type of review. But really, am I working towards performing and doing well and moving ahead in my marriage the same way I'm in my career? Thirdly, and this makes, I think, things much more difficult, is I may not have any idea at all what a successful marriage even looks like. I may not have ever seen good role modeling. I may have never seen a good marriage in my parents' marriage, in my friends' marriages, in any marriages that I've ever really looked at, and I may have no clear picture of what a healthy marriage actually is. In this video, we want to highlight a couple of the aspects of our book which we think you can begin implementing right now. And we're going to talk about two different areas. The first area we refer to as the 3 paradigm shifts. These are ways of thinking about marriage, conceptualizing marriage, and really understanding what my role is as a spouse as I approach my marriage. They'll give a totally different picture than what you may be used to and what you may have thought about up till now. The second thing we want to give you is what we refer to as the 4 pillars of giving. These are step-by-step, practical ways of implementing these paradigm shifts into your relationship. Where did all this come from? First of all, we immersed ourselves for decades in mystical Jewish esoteric wisdom, which has very, very deep understandings of what the female and male polarities are, how relationships work, how love is built. The second thing is we've married that up with very, very cutting edge research from the world of positive psychology into how marriage works, where we derive happiness, where we derive meaning from, and overall how relationships work and how they click. We want to share these ideas with you in a way that right now you can begin implementing them into your marriage, and you can begin to build a marriage which can be the center of your happiness, security, love, intimacy, really everything a person wants, that heaven on earth that we've always dreamt about, that can really truly be yours if you take these formulas and you take these secrets and you begin putting them into your marriage today.
Just to share with you the power of the information in this book, the couples that we've been working with are 10 times more likely to stay married more than the national average. But the reality is, staying married is not our goal. The question is, how do you make a marriage flourish? How do you make a marriage awesome? A place where everything comes alive. Before we go into more information, we want to just give you a bit of background about who we are and really what we're doing here today.
My own background academically includes an undergraduate degree from Northwestern and a graduate degree from Columbia University. Career-wise, I spent most of my career as a Wall Street analyst at one of the largest investment banks in the world called JP Morgan. And my job there was basically to figure out how very, very complex industries worked, boil it down, write about it, teach it over to my clients, make them experts in it so that they could then invest in that industry. About 15 years ago, my wife and I sat down and said, maybe there's a better thing to do with that skill set. Maybe there's a higher use of that skill set. What if instead of figuring out complex industries and helping people invest in them, what if we figured out complex areas of life, marriage, how to raise great children, how to have a flourishing relationship? What if we figured that out and started teaching that over to people to help them have great marriages and relationships? Wouldn't that be a much better, much more meaningful way to spend a career than helping people invest? That was around the same time that I met Peter, and we started working together and collaborating, and that collaboration has been going on for 15 years. But before we tell you about that, I think Peter wants to tell you about his own background.
So I was living in Boulder, Colorado, pursuing a degree in architecture. And architecture was amazing, and I loved it. But I actually felt after a period of time that I wasn't so interested really in building buildings, infrastructure. I was way more passionate and way more excited about building people. And therefore, over a period of time, that led me to pursuing a master's degree in positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania.
So in 2005, Peter and I launched a postgraduate program known as the Dr. David Robinson Institute for Jewish Heritage. Peter serves as the Dean of Students, I serve as the Director, and that has been our full-time occupation since that time. The young men who come to our program, it's about 30 guys per year, range from ages early 20s to mid 40s, and from all types of backgrounds professionally and academically. The one thing that unites them is that they want to spend some time learning about business ethics, leadership, spirituality, and many of them tell us more than anything else how to build amazing relationships and marriages. What gives us the ability to do that, we think, is really three things. First of all, we have, I think, between the two of us about 45 years combined in our respective marriages. So we've been living marriage ourselves and building families ourselves for a long time. Secondly, we have been for decades learning Jewish mysticism and esoteric Jewish ideas that come from ancient texts which deal with the most unbelievably relevant aspects of how human beings work, how relationships work, how love works. And the third thing, of course, is that we have a living laboratory of students who have built marriages, and we've been with them from preparatory stages for marriage to early stages of marriage to children to working through building families. That's been our living laboratory, which has stress tested all of these ideas.
So the question is, why are students actually come to us? And our students tell us very clearly that they feel equipped and trained in all areas of their life, especially their professional lives, that they are ready to go. But they feel like the most important area of their life that they're striving for, which is their marriage, they feel totally not equipped. They feel totally not trained. And when they look around and they see other people who are successful in their professional lives, those same people a lot of times have failing marriages. They feel like they have to invest time and energy into really understanding how to build a great marriage. So we understand that all of you are busy and it's difficult to find time. But what we've done is we've taken our seminars, our lectures, our ideas, and we basically have condensed them and put them into this video for you.
It's important to realize two things about what we want to share with you today. First of all, it applies to everybody. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your affiliation is, male, female. It's relevant for anybody who wants to jumpstart their relationship and build it powerfully. The second thing is, it doesn't matter what part of the relationship you may be in. You may be thinking about marriage, you may be preparing for a marriage, you might be in one, you might be struggling in one, and you might have a decent marriage that you just want to make fantastic. That's what we're here to help you with. Across the board, everybody and every type of relationship. The work and the research that we've done in this area gives you an exact formula, an exact structure, and gives you the secrets that you can use to build a great relationship starting now. And by the way, this is not about becoming a terrible martyr and suffering so that my spouse can be happy. This is about building a great marriage which will lift both of you up and give both of you the happiness that you want. Great marriages make for great and happy lives. People frequently ask us, what exactly do we have wrong about dating and relationships? So we developed 3 paradigm shifts that we want to share with you. Without these paradigms in place, it's almost impossible to have a great marriage. With these paradigms in place, we believe it's almost impossible to fail.
Paradigm number 1. Let's define what a marriage is. You know, it's interesting when you ask people the definition of a marriage. So they can give you maybe a legal one, but to get a real definition is very difficult. And the question really becomes, how can you have a great marriage if you can't define it? You know, it's fascinating. You look at any GPS system. The whole system only functions by basically giving a clear goal of where you want to get to. So if you can't define what a great marriage is, so how can you ever really get one? What we want to give you right now is a clear and simple definition of what a marriage is. Marriage is a total investment in the well-being and the building of your spouse. What marriage is not is a focus on what do I gain from this relationship. And if you get the marriage definition correct, if you really set up the paradigm properly, that can be a total game changer in your marriage.
Paradigm number 2 is that great marriages don't just happen. They have to be built. Now, there's an incredible idea in Jewish mysticism which explains that everything in reality, everything in human experience takes place always in 2 separate phases. Phase 1 is known as the inspiration phase. Phase 2 is known as the building and making it real phase. It happens everywhere, but perhaps nowhere is it more salient than in the area of marriage and relationships, where we clearly have a romance phase that begins everything, and then we have a second phase, which is much, much longer and much more difficult, called building it and making it real. We all know the romance phase. We all know what that's like. I can't breathe. I'm overcome. I'm intoxicated with how amazing this person I've met is. We're going to live happily ever after. We've all seen the Hollywood romance movies, which make that the emotional reality that we walk around in, right? The couple meets, boy loses girl, boy gets girl again, and in a crescendo of happiness and love, they fall into each other's arms and embrace, and the curtain closes. Of course, real marriage, we know, begins the next day or the next week when the curtain comes back up, and now it's no longer quite so fresh and no longer quite so exciting, and she doesn't look quite as great to him, and he's not quite as awkwardly charming as maybe she thought he was. And the question is, now what? At that point, the couple begins thinking, well, I guess I found another dud here, or I guess it's time for my next conquest. When in reality, they're just misperceiving what the process of building a marriage is. Phase 2 begins, and that is called the building phase. And the building phase is the long phase where we're now going to develop the relationship, we're going to invest in each other, and we're going to make it real, and we're going to make it beautiful. Now, don't think that the inspiration phase is some kind of trick just to get you involved, and it's a horrible cosmic trick here. The reality is that the building phase is meant to get you back to what that inspiration phase showed you for free. But this time you have to earn it. And it takes a long time, but you can get back to a point where you bring the inspiration back and it's real, and you have a relationship of love and affection and excitement and fun and tenderness and security and intimacy and all the things that you've dreamt about, but this time you've made it real. Phase 2.
So at this point is where great marriages happen. At this point, when all of a sudden the honeymoon experience fades, now there's a choice that couples have to make. Am I going to build a great marriage or not? And we've seen a lot of couples that are great couples and have wonderful chemistry, and they get to this point, and all of a sudden they say to themselves, maybe it's not the right person, I'm not so into it anymore, and they basically in some way give up. And we've seen other couples that get to this point and they say, let's make it happen, let's build a great marriage, and the whole thing comes alive.
Before I tell you the name of paradigm shift number 3, I want to tell you a story. In the spring of 2000, I was one of a small group of analysts from JP Morgan who got together with a group of consultants from McKinsey & Company. We did a big joint piece of research, we chartered a plane, and we flew all over the country in this private plane, seeing their biggest clients and our biggest clients. One night at 30,000 feet, totally exhausted and talking about anything we could think of besides work. We were talking about families and we were talking about just anything. And one of the young analysts sort of piped up and he said, you know, he's been married for 2 years and things were really great when they started and they were madly in love with each other and his wife was fantastic. And now 2 years in, he sees his wife doesn't do so many things for him anymore and she doesn't seem to be expressing her love for him too much anymore. And he's thinking maybe, you know, it's time to get out of this relationship. So I thought about it and I said, you know, my friend, you have a serious issue here, and that is you just don't understand what causes love. As you can imagine, 6 heads, immediately turned to say, what? So he said to me, what? And I said, there was a famous rabbi around 100 years ago, and he wrote a piece about love. And what he described is that what causes love is giving. Do you ever wonder why parents love their kids more than kids love their parents? Because parents give to their kids much more. Why do we love our dogs? Because we raise them and we invest in them. Why do we love a plant? Because we tend it and we help it to grow. When we invest of ourselves, we see that the investment puts ourselves into the other, and we come to love where we give. So paradigm shift number 3 is to recognize that all loving is based on giving. You want to love your spouse more, give to your spouse more. And you can begin this process right now, and you can begin to build an amazing relationship.
So let's get practical here. The common denominator with all of the paradigms that we just went through is there has to be a total focus on giving. But instead of just leaving you with just a vague idea and in the clouds type of idea, what we've done is we have given you practical tools about actually how to make this happen. And these are the 4 pillars of giving. Now, these 4 pillars of giving are total game changers, and you can begin to implement them into your marriage today. Now, what's actually quite fascinating, we've seen this with all of the couples that we've worked with, is that when you start working on these 4 pillars today, they create this amazing virtuous cycle. Meaning, I start implementing these pillars. All of a sudden, I see positive feedback from my spouse. Therefore, that creates a good feeling for me. My spouse starts to mimic these behaviors, and all of a sudden, there's this upward spiral of positive change in the relationship, and it's amazing to see. So what we want to do is we want to go through right now these 4 pillars with you and give you a taste of each pillar so you can begin to change your marriage today.
Pillar of giving number 1, we call keep it fresh. I can't tell you how many times we've seen young couples come in who've been married 6 months, a year. You would think they would be full of life and full of happiness, and they look like they are middle-aged people from the standpoint of their relationship. They look like they've been married for years and years and years. Things are boring, things are staid, things are just happening in the same way over and over again. And the question is, what happened to all that excitement that they had when they were dating? What happened to the excitement from the beginning stage of their marriage? So there are a few things working against us in terms of keeping marriage fresh. The first thing working against us is simply that human beings crave newness. We like a new challenge, we like a new conquest, we like something new, a new song, anything new, a new device. The second thing that makes it worse for us is that advertising is constantly bombarding us with images which make us feel we're lacking something. Otherwise, it's very unsuccessful advertising. The third thing that we find works against us is the rise of social media and its place in our lives. There's a concept called social comparison theory. And what that means is I'm always going to compare myself to the images that I'm seeing around myself. What do I see in social media? What do I see in my friends and everybody I'm connected with? The most perfect moments in their lives. The perfect boyfriend, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect vacation, the perfect meal, everything amazing. I don't see what happened 5 minutes earlier, and I don't see the fight that happens 5 minutes later, and I don't see what looks like when they're feeling sick or when they're at work. I see perfect moments. And what that makes me feel constantly is in my own relationship, wow, look how much I'm missing. Everybody else has got such an exciting life. So all of these things conspire to make us feel that our own marriages are stale. And the risk, of course, if we don't change that cycle, is that we're going to begin to look for newness outside of our relationships as opposed to finding it and rebuilding it inside the relationships.
So practically speaking, how can you do this? Imagine you had a marriage where that newness didn't fade. And even more than that, imagine if you had tools actually to be able to create this newness and to recreate it from within your marriage without having to go to outside sources to make this happen. So there are lots of ways actually how to do that, which we discuss, but I want to focus on one area, which is basically focused and passionate time together. And I want to speak about 2 practical ways of how to do this. So number 1 is a date night. The basic research shows that 2/3 of couples only go out about 1 night a month. What we've seen is that date night can be a total game changer in a marriage, but that's something you do every single week. There should be a date night that is stuck into your calendar. and it doesn't budge, and you know about it in advance. Basically, it's a Tuesday night, it's a Wednesday night, and you build everything around it. You push off work meetings, you push off extra things you're doing, and you know every single week in your calendar, this is gonna happen. And when you show up to that date, you show up ready to go. You prepare yourself, you look good, you have good energy, you put your device away. You do whatever you can in order to make that time together special. Number 2 is a concept which is actually quite fascinating, and we've seen it to be something which is amazing, which is vacations. Now, whenever you speak about vacations, people say, I don't have the time for it, I can't afford it, and who's gonna watch the kids? Which are all true. But they're making a huge mistake, and what we're talking about is actually mini vacations. Mini vacations can be sub 12 hours. My wife and I both finish work, we get a hotel room in the city, we go for dinner, go back to our hotel room, and we both go to work the next day. And this is a small, quick escape. Let's say you can't do it during the week. Sunday afternoon, you get a babysitter, you find a hotel room, you go hang out for a few hours, and you come back to put the kids to bed. These mini vacations are awesome. The benefits you have of these mini vacations are not only planning it, the time during it, but obviously savoring it once it's done. But what can really happen, the most amazing part is the playing that can happen on a consistent basis is awesome. And the research actually shows that small mini vacations actually have a greater impact on your well-being and your marriage more than just those, great vacations that happen once in a blue moon.
The second pillar of giving is something we simply refer to as gratitude. Imagine the following story. You're on the subway, you're riding along, you get up to get off the subway, your wallet falls out of your pocket, you don't notice, the guy sitting next to you notices. He does the decent thing, he picks it up, he says, sir, and he jumps off the train with you. You take it out of his hand, you're astonished. This is the greatest act of kindness you've ever seen in your entire life. You run home, you call your wife, you call your friends, you take down this guy's address, you're gonna write him cards every holiday season, right? You're gonna send presents to his children because he's the most unbelievable person that ever lived. Okay, how about with my spouse? So my spouse does, let's say, 20 things a day for me. She smiles at me. He takes me where I need to go. They take care of the kids. They take care of the house. They call me. All the things that my spouse, the countless things that he does for you, that she does for you, that my spouse does for me, it's endless. And yet, what do I notice? I only notice when something is not there. So what's going on? So in science, there's a concept called olfactory fatigue. Olfactory fatigue means that if you walk into a perfume store and you're overcome by the intoxicating smell of perfume, you know how long that lasts? I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you actually don't notice it anymore. So the most beautiful thing in the world, if you have it all the time, you simply don't notice it. We all know that when we do something for somebody else and nobody notices, they don't say thank you, they don't notice it, probably the first reaction is disappointment, and then that gives way to sadness. And then if it happens repeatedly, that we see there's just no gratitude at all, no recognition, it becomes anger. On the other hand, when someone says, wow, what you did for me was so nice, thank you so much, oh, that was so special what you did for me, we know it builds us, it makes us feel great, it gives us positive energy. Not only does it give it positive energy to feel good that they thanked us, it wants us to do more nice things for that person. So it's a Kickstarter when we show gratitude. And I think the most ironic thing is that all the research from positive psychology shows the key to happiness is not just giving gratitude, the key to happiness is having gratitude. The more I can notice and have gratitude for all the little things in my life, all the little things my spouse does for me, the wealthier and more blessed I feel and the happier I become.
So let's talk about how to implement this in a practical way. There are two practical realities you have to actually really work out, which is not only how to feel gratitude, but how to express gratitude. But let's just try and focus on just one part of it, which is expressing gratitude. There are two areas that we've seen that have been really helpful for the people that we've worked with. Number one is begin to express gratitude for all the small things. A lot of times you think about gratitude, you think about the big things that are done. What about all the small things that are done for you during the day? When you see those small things being done, say thank you. A cup of coffee is made for you. The garbage is taken out. Dinner is served. Whatever it may be, express gratitude for it, okay? Even more, use your device to express gratitude. We have so many different ways of how to communicate with our spouses. Use your device. Send a message, send a text, send an email, something. Just saying thank you for something small throughout the day. Number 2 is gifts. Now, when people hear gifts, they always think cash flow, okay? But when you think of gifts, gifts have got to be, there should be in your marriage 2 to 3 times a week that there should be gifts that are given. And these are small gifts. You know your wife loves a certain kind of Snapple. When you're on your way home, stop at the gas station and get that kind of Snapple. Your wife loves a certain kind of Frappuccino. When you're on your way home, get that Frappuccino. You're walking out of the subway station, you see flowers for sale. Buy a single rose. Your husband loves X. Buy that small thing and have it waiting for him when he comes home. Small gifts can be a total game changer, but they should be happening at least 2 to 3 times a week in your marriage.
Pillar of giving number 3, we call respect. Now, most of us don't have any problem thinking about what it means to respect somebody. When it comes to the way we behave in the workplace, the way we think about famous people, rich people, we know exactly what it means to show them respect. We speak courteously. We stand up if somebody important enters the room. We're never condescending. We're not critical. We don't make snide comments. We don't ignore them. When it comes to respect, we didn't need to write any kind of book to teach you how to respect people that are outside of your world of marriage. But somehow when it comes to our spouses, we tend to fall a little bit flat. And of course, the irony is, who is more deserving of my respect than my spouse? My spouse who basically thinks about me, cares about me, invests in me, and yet I wind up not speaking with respect. Now, don't think it's a neutral if you speak to your spouse without respect. It's actually something which tears the spouse down. And if I speak with respect to everybody else and my spouse knows that, and I can't somehow do it with my spouse, that makes it even worse. Now, it wasn't always this way, and I think we have to all take a little bit of a litmus test here. Think about what you were like when you first met your spouse, when you were first dating. How you made sure your hair looked perfect, how you made sure you were dressed perfectly, you smelled good, you were groomed, the way you spoke was always polite. All the things that you did in that early dating period to make sure that you looked your best and acted your best, period. Well, now fast forward to now. How much care do I take with how I look, how I smell, how groomed I am, exactly how I speak, exactly how I listen, am I attentive? If you can measure the gap between how I was when I was dating and how I am now with my spouse, that is exactly the amount of deterioration that has taken place in how much you respect your spouse.
So let's talk about a very practical area of respect, which is communication. And what I want to do is give you an exercise you can actually do tonight. Before you walk in the front door of your house when you come up from work, I want you to stand there and say to yourself that for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to speak to my spouse in the same way that I speak to my boss. You know, it's amazing when we communicate with our bosses at work, you know, the communication is awesome. We are respectful and we are focused and we are, you know, we do all the right things. So I want you to focus on 2 areas when you walk in the house. Number 1 is how you speak. The same way you speak to your boss, speak to your spouse. Ask, how are you? How was your night last night? How are you feeling? Etc. Just try and communicate in that same way. When I encounter my boss at work, I don't just launch into all the issues I'm having or the fact I'm not feeling so great. Number 2 is to focus on really listening in a very attentive way. When I walk into my boss's office at work, I make eye contact. I don't have my headphones in. I'm not multitasking. I'm not on my phone. Okay? Listen properly for those 10 minutes. If you can do this exercise properly, you'll see that the way you and your spouse treat each other can be drastically different quite fast.
The 4th pillar of giving is one that we refer to as it all depends on me. And this might well be the most important of the 4 pillars. And it involves asking myself, what exactly does my husband or wife need from me as a spouse? What is it that I bring to the relationship that they need? How can I bring out the best in them? We're all experts in identifying all of the failings of our spouses. No question about it. I know exactly the problems that my spouse has. She's uncaring, he's unfeeling, she's insensitive, they don't think about me enough, we know all these issues. So ask yourself the question, was my spouse that way when we first got married? when we were dating, was my spouse uncaring, cold, unfeeling? And if the answer is, yeah, they really were, then I have to ask myself a different question, was why exactly did I marry them? But most likely the real answer is no, they weren't that way at all. So now I have to ask myself, what might I be bringing to the table that has caused my spouse over time to lose interest, to become cold, to become uncaring? If I can begin focusing on what energy might be negative that I'm bringing to the table, then I can begin to change that overall dynamic. And the beauty is, the virtuous cycle that Peter has mentioned before is nowhere more present and more powerful than here. When I start showing my spouse that irrespective of what they're doing to work on the relationship, I start working on the relationship and I begin giving, the most amazing thing begins to happen. My spouse begins to awaken and give back to me. And once that happens, wow, now I'm energized to give even more. This creates another one of those cycles which can be so powerful in changing the overall dynamic of the marriage. When we begin to move into this pillar of giving and acting as though it depends on me, it can become an incredibly powerful event in the changing of the tide of our marriage. So don't wait, you can start doing it right now.
All of us have a few core negative traits that we will see in all areas of our life, especially in our marriages. You'll see people struggle with anger issues, they are overcritical, they're lazy, and you'll see, and we see this especially in the couples that we've worked with, is that those issues will come alive everywhere, and especially when they come alive is in your marriage. And what we're telling you here today is that it's very easy to think when we have our negative character traits to think it's, well, the context is the issue. Because if I wasn't in that situation or my boss didn't treat me that way, then everything would be fine. But the reality is these core issues are going to go with you everywhere you go, and they will especially come alive in your marriage. And the work that we have for you is to do this. Forget about your spouse and just take one of these core negative issues and focus on it. Go to seminars, listen to podcasts, go to therapy, read books. Do everything you can just to attack that issue full head on. If you're not sure what the issue is, so ask your spouse, and I'm sure you'll get clarity quite fast. But the goal here is forget the marriage, forget your spouse, focus on what you bring to the table and attack it head on. We have seen more than anywhere else the impact of this work in your marriage can do wonders.
What we've just given you here are little snippets and little highlights of the 4 pillars of giving. Now, don't panic, okay? This is not something which has to be done right now, all at once, everything together, all 4 pillars. The key thing is to start right now with one pillar. Pick the one that you think is the easiest one to deal with. Begin implementing it. Start it tonight and begin building. You can go from that pillar to the next pillar to the next one, and you will see that starting now, your marriage will begin to expand and to flourish. Your happiness, your intimacy, the security you feel in your marriage, all of these things will begin to build. You truly can build that heaven on earth that you want your marriage to be. We really hope you've enjoyed and gained from what we tried to share with you today. The book, Not a Partnership, is a 2-parter. Part 1 of the book is basically the paradigms, the 3 paradigm shifts we've talked about, which give you a whole different picture of what your marriage can look like and should look like. Part 2 of the book is all of those practical steps that we've touched upon today, which make up the 4 pillars of giving. We believe that these 2 parts of the book, this book will give you the understanding and the tools to build a truly amazing marriage, and we hope you'll pick it up and start working on it right now. We wrote this book in a way that it's not a one-time read. It's a book that you can live with and grow with in your marriage. You're going to come back to it over and over again for new ideas, for reminders, and for inspiration to keep going.
If you're looking to take your marriage to the next level, if you really want things to be different in your marriage, you can do it today. Check out our new book on Amazon, Not a Partnership. Thank you so much, really. Wishing you only tons of blessing and lots of success.